Dear guests, students and colleagues, SMK University of Applied Social Sciences initiates its International Scientific Conference, Societal Interactions, Rethinking Modern Issues. My name is Diana Garlicka. I'm a head of Science and Research Division, and on behalf of SMK and the organizing committee of the conference, I would like to welcome you all here. It is our pleasure to have you here. There are foreign participants as well from countries like Spain, Germany, Switzerland, North Macedonia, and the list of countries represented by the editorial board of the conference proceedings is even greater. This makes our conference truly international. Yet, I would like to allow myself a few words in Lithuanian. Mėly svečiai, studentai ir kolegos, šiandien yra svarbi diena. Socialinių mokslų kolegija inicijuoja savo tarptautinę mokslinę konferenciją. Džiaugiamės galėdami pasveikinti jūs visus čia. Konferencijoje dalyvauja užsienio pranešėjai, taigi mūsų konferencija tikrai yra tarptautinė. Konferencijos sveikinimo kalbos bus sakomas anglų kalba. Vėliau sekcijose pranešėjai gali pasirinkti pristatymo kalbą. Modern issues of global development have been intensified under the impact of global pandemics. The new normal requires rethinking of forces of power, stakeholders of, and approaches to modern issues. Scientific community, businesses, governments, and society at large need to re-establish interactions anew. SMK University of Applied Social Sciences organizes this scientific conference to gather the academic communities of Lithuania and foreign countries, representatives of science and business to solve the problems of societal interactions and rethink modern issues. We would like to start our scientific conference with the opening speech from the director of SMK University of Applied Social Sciences, Viktorija Polubinskienė.
Good morning, dear our guests, our colleagues. It's a great honor for me to speak on this conference today. I think that the main goal of conference is to be a bridge between different countries, different institutions, and different researchers. And the basic idea is that only then we work together, share our knowledge with each other, we can become creators of new thinking and improve and growing up together. So it is especially important that you are here today and you dedicate your knowledge and your time to SMK. I also want to give special thanks for organizing committee for bringing us all together today. And the geography of this conference is particularly wide. It will be a real pleasure to see and hear guests from UK, Deutschland, Armenia, Spain, Switzerland, and Greece. We are also very pleased with participating colleagues from other Lithuanian higher education institutions. And of course, I'm very proud of my colleagues from SMK, who took the time and put effort to prepare the research and will share the results with us today. So let this conference create new connections, new opportunities, new ideas, and provide input for their implementation. Good luck for all speakers. Thank you.
We thank SMK Director Viktorija Polubinskienė for encouraging words and the invitation to discover solutions to societal issues of modern days. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce to you our honorable guests. And the first speaker of the panel is Aurelia Pavilaike, LMT representative, the representative of the Research Council of Lithuania. With her presentation, International and Institutional Transformative Approaches Enabling Integration and Stimulation of Societal Impact. Aurelia, the floor is yours.
Or I should say more specifically, the approaches that enable integration and stimulation of societal impact. As I have been introduced, my name is Aurelia Pavilaike, and I'm a national contact point for Lithuanian Research Council. I describe myself as a professional at the interface of science. It's a new word, a new description coined by Portuguese colleagues, which describes my wide range of skills in research management, research policy, strategy, and impact, mainly in the UK, but most recently in Lithuania as well. I have a lot of experience working with social scientists in the UK as well, in Lithuania, and most recently with different multidisciplinary teams. So hopefully that my presentation today will give some food for thought for this conference and a further discussion how we can integrate social sciences and develop further societal impact. But before we discuss what transformative approaches enables integration and stimulation of societal impact, I would like us to agree and use the same definition of impact. Economic and Social Research Council, ESRC, in the UK define impact as demonstrable contribution that research makes to the society and the economy. This term and this description and understanding is quite well adapted across Europe. So what we're trying to say is that the research impact is the effect research has beyond the academia. And I think so we all can agree with that. And those effects can take different shapes and forms. There can be a cultural effect, environmental effect, policy, economic, technological, health-related. It can be an impact, effect, a change of our understanding of the society or the raise of awareness. So what we're trying to say today is that impact is change. Impact is not the outputs or dissemination or results of your research. It is actual change, demonstrable change beyond academia. And that change does not happen in isolation. And one discipline, as we have heard already today, cannot solve the societal challenges we're facing. In the social sciences case, the impact actually, I think, is a factor that addresses critically important change in the discipline. Moreover, social sciences have a really valid role to play to helping policymakers and STEM colleagues to develop solutions that people are able and willing to adopt. And most recently, what we heard and we understand is the adoption, for example, and take-up of the vaccines. Yes, you can develop a vaccine in a laboratory, but the take-up of the vaccines and some sort of programs are not going to be able without social sciences intervention. However, that impact that we're talking about in society impact does not happen in isolation. There needs to be national and institutional level strategies adopted to encourage societal impact development. And here, this is UK example comes really well into place because UK is ahead of many countries around the world, as well as in Europe, in developing societal impact and allowing strategies to be developed at the national and institutional levels. It all has started in 1994 with the Roper Award, Realizing Our Potential Award that was part of one of the funding bodies' pilot study. Since then, as we can see from the history of the impact has snowballed. In 2009, impact plans became pathways to impact that were included in research grant applications that when the researchers apply for any type of funding, they had to describe, excel, and talk about the different steps they're going to take to make sure that their research will have impact. As we can see from the history as well, that the impact later on has been developed and weaved into the national assessment of the research called Research Excellence Framework. There were a lot of pilots, conversations, and in 2014, for the first time, impact case studies have been submitted as part of the national research assessment. In 2014, impact was weighted 20% out of the 100%. And in the REF 2021 exercise, the exercise happens every 7 years, the impact has increased to the weighting of 25%. So there was clear, we can see that there's a clear importance and the clear rise of the impact that has to be demonstrated and comes from the research. And most of that has been integrated into the strategies. As well, we know and we are aware that even the European Commission with its framework program, Horizon 2020, has put more emphasis on the impact. And that emphasis on the impact and the return and the change beyond academia is seen in the Horizon Europe program. So when we look at the REF exercise in the UK, which is quite unique, and a lot of countries and institutions are copying and replicating across Europe, we can see that the impact is being defined again as this change, benefit to the economy, society, environment, beyond. But that's what is interesting here, that the impact is being, the impact case studies, I should say, are being described and being evaluated by these two general criteria, reach and significance. So when we talk about the impact and we talk about the change, that change can happen anywhere, isn't it? But what with these national strategies that are really transforming the science ecosystems, what we're trying to do, especially in the UK, is to show how the reach, how your research reached different beneficiary groups, how it made an impact on those different beneficiary groups, and how many of them. And all of that, I have to say, has to be evidenced. You cannot say something that is not true, because that will have to be, the evidence will have to be provided. And here I would like to present you an exercise as an example of an impact case study that has been submitted by the social scientists in 2021 REF submission. And here we can see that two anthropologists the research that came out of the outcomes that came about the research, made an impact case study that is really trying to show and improve the learning and understanding of the human evolution in the museums and the schools globally. It's important to understand that these impact case studies are really underpinned by the research that has happened either as part of the grant funding or as part of the everyday work. But the focus of the impact case studies is not research. It is the details of the impact. And again, going back to the reach and significance that each impact study has made in their specific discipline. So in this impact case study, the museum practices were changed. They transformed visitor interpretation of the human evolution. There was improved curriculum developed in higher education institutions as well as schools. And there was a wider engagement with wider public. So what we can see is those impact case studies are really defining as well and showing us how we understand the impact and the change, the reach and significance of it. And it's one of the mechanisms that are being adopted across, as I said, Europe. As well, in the UK, the research funding councils, as we have seen, are really much immersed and supporting the impact agenda. For the over 13 years, as I mentioned at the beginning, in the history of the impact, when you're submitting a grant proposal, you have to submit a separate 2-page document called Pathways to Impact, where you have to explain what it means, how your research will achieve impact. We know that impact does not sometimes happen for 10, 15 years of post-grant proposal. But what research councils are trying to find out, and the same is with European Commission, is they want you to demonstrate the steps that you are taking towards reaching that impact. So in the case of the UK, for nearly 13 years, you had to submit Pathways to Impact. But in 2020, those 2 pages, separate document has been scrapped, meaning that the impact has to be incorporated into the actual grant proposal. It's not something to add on, it's not something extra, it's something that is integrated in part of your grant application. It's something that researchers have to think when they are submitting a proposal. It's something that actually is very important and is not an addition to it. And I think most importantly as well, impact is celebrated, and it's being celebrated more and more across Europe, but very much so in the UK as they're really pioneers. There are awards, the research impact is celebrated on the Research Council websites, and there are a lot of recognition for the researchers who do impact. Well, as this conference is hosted in Lithuania, and I've been working in Lithuania for the last year, I think it's important that we mention what how a Lithuanian impact ecosystem looks like. And I would say it's very at the infancy stage. We do have some misconceptions what impact is. There's still a lot of confusion and mixing between the impact and the results. There are some, however, national level strategies through which impact might be defined. But like looking at the strategy, Lithuanian Strategy 2030, we have as well research assessment exercise, we have smart specialization strategies that again really define or try to define how impact should look like coming out of proposals. And if we look at the research assessment exercise in Lithuania, the exercise has 9 objectives, and it's kind of vaguely defined what the exercise is trying to do: to increase accountability of public spending, demonstrate investment in research, encourage improved research performance. So it all kind of talks about the impact, but not as explicitly as we have seen in the cases of the UK. And what is interesting as well is that this societal and economic impact, when it has been assessed in the exercise, there were clear differences how the impact is being achieved, or how socioeconomic activities and the impact is being achieved. So mainly it happens through teaching, where mostly in other European universities, it happens through the research or knowledge transfer activities. And here it happens in Lithuania, primarily happens through the teaching. So there's a lot as well to learn. But when we look at the analysis, what disciplines and research areas have achieved impact, clearly social sciences and humanities are well ahead of other disciplines and research areas in Lithuania, in demonstrating that social impact is really much driven by those 2 big disciplinary areas. But I think, being at this infancy stage gives a lot of us room for improvement. It gives us a lot of things to consider. And Horizon Europe framework program that we really encourage everybody to apply and consider applying for is a very much impact-driven framework. Yes, it's something very top-down, but Horizon Europe and European Commission is really encouraging to think about the impact when you're thinking about your research or applying in the specific for the research. So we have seen how actually in the UK, funders were the first ones to start awarding and recognizing impact, and then the government has taken this on board, including their national assessment. And I think with Horizon Europe framework program, which is very much, as I said, impact-driven, it will be even more important to recognize the impact, and the impact will be recognized. In the case of Lithuanian social scientists community, we can hope that this framework will encourage collaborations with STEM subject disciplines. As we know, the challenges, and as we talked and we mentioned, identified by the funder cannot be achieved by one discipline. I think those times are quite over, as we know that societal challenges are very varied and have many facets. So in the case of Horizon Europe funding program, there's a new Pathways to Impact section. There's a very clear demand and request to achieve one of the identified impacts: scientific impact, societal impact, economic impact. But as I mentioned before, nobody's expecting during the lifetime of the project to achieve that impact. But again, what you have to think as a scientist, to think about the steps to take that you can achieve that impact. And I think this is where the role of the social scientists and scientists are going to be incredibly important, because social scientists are the ones that actually can help to achieve those impacts. So we talked about the national level strategies. We talked about international funders as well. Obviously, we can talk about the subject the whole day. But then what should institutions do? What mandate there has to be there to support societal well-being at the institutional level? And what we saw is in the experience of the UK and, for example, Netherlands as well, and other countries, Australia and Canada, that changes at the institutional level as well are very much driving the impact agenda. So we have institutional impact strategies being developed. We have academics and professionals dedicated to develop the impact, talk about the impact, and teach researchers what impact is. We have specific units, departments being developed as well across the universities that focuses on either knowledge transfer partnerships and impact together. There are internal funds that support the impact development. The impact is being seen as part of an academic life, not something extra, not an academic burden. And this is a quote from my vice principal at the Queen Mary University of London that I used to work with, where he really captures the societal impact is embedded in all the research activities. It has to be embedded, it has to be recognized, and there has to be structures at the institutional, national, and international level to support these activities. So what priorities can be for social sciences? So for the social sciences, I think what we need to do, we need to look at the collaboration. So we have social scientists have really this great a place and a space to actually do and encourage this impact development. We have collaboration, we can have collaboration with industry, and it's encouraging that the priorities for social sciences would be to focus on that collaboration with industry, communities, third sectors. We have seen and we heard that one discipline is not going to change. We need to have intersectoral working. We need to understand the different methods, and we need to encourage those collaborations. Social sciences need to have visibility and accessibility. I have included here a link, but you can always Google it. If you Google Shape British Academy, you will come off of this platform that is happening in the UK. So British Academy is one of the UK's funders. And they created this platform that represents social sciences, humanities, art, people, and economic subjects. Because what they're trying to show with this visibility of social sciences that these subjects helps us to make sense of the human world. They add value to the complexity of life and the culture. They make us understand and solve global issues. Shape skills are particularly valuable to the 21st century workplace. So it helps us to analyze, interpret, create, communicate, and collaborate. Again, that goes back to collaboration within the disciplines and outside of the discipline. So social sciences, in order to make this transformative change, in order to contribute to developing of the societal impact and other impacts, has to be visible and have to be accessible. Citizens like myself and others have to understand how social sciences are contributing to kind of their well-being. At the same time, social scientists' priority in order to develop pathways to impact, societal impact have to be credible. So, we have to know that social science are contributing to the policy developments, that the policy makers make decisions based on the science, that it's a science-based and knowledge-based decisions rather than just a political decision. So social scientists have a really key important role playing in credibility. At the same time, we can say that credibility of social sciences and other disciplines can be proven by exercises like we have seen Research Excellence Framework in the UK, or the excellence frameworks, similar frameworks around the world. And we have to think about incentives. We cannot assume that social sciences are the only warriors going out there and making the impact, contributing to impact and joining up all the dots. But we have to, and in most cases they are, but they're not recognized. There needs to be time recognition, there needs to be award schemes, there need to be recognition in terms of the promotion and as well at the national, institutional and international level. So all these four priorities actually really play into how social sciences can contribute to developing the impact agenda even further. But overall, I think so there has to be an evolution of academic culture. The academics need to understand that working in silos is actually disappearing, that there is more cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary work happening. We need to learn the differences of the different disciplines. I'm not saying that every single researcher, scientist, academic has to do impact, far from it. But I think if we would analyze some of the examples and the researcher might say, oh, no, I'm not doing any impact work. Actually, that probably your work has contributed to some sort of, or made some sort of a change, and that is impact. So there has to be an evolution of academic culture, and there has to be, again, awards, and mentioning those awards because they are very important. There needs to be recognition, and impact, again, needs to be the integral part of the community. around the institutions. And kind of just to finish it off, I would like to say that even though we're talking about, and I presented different aspects of the impact, as snapshots of different elements at the national and international level, like funding, Horizon Europe, the funding agencies in the UK, what we're trying to do in Lithuania as well. But what we have to think is that all those strategies should not act on their own. That is the evolution of the ecosystems. And when I talk about the impact ecosystem, it has to be a collaborative effort. If we're really serious about having social sciences visibility, having recognition for the social sciences, I think the way to move forward is actually to think about that impact beyond academia. Obviously, we're going to have fundamental scientists who create and do the science within their discipline, who are really niche, but most of the time we will have scientists who are contributing to the well-being of our economies, our societal and environmental well-being. And all of those strategies, they have to come together. We have to join up the approaches in order to achieve that. And I think UK, even though research excellence framework is very much not liked exercise because it's very administratively intensive, it is one of those exercises actually have put the impact and social sciences impact on the equal footing with the STEM subjects and made a stage and showcase the importance of having social sciences and social sciences in the discussion around the table when we're solving the challenges of today's world. So that is it from me. Thank you very much. I hope it gave you food for thought for the further discussion at the conference, discussing social sciences place actually in today's society. And I think we should not be forgetting that the impact plays a key role in that and how we can strengthen social sciences standing, credibility and visibility through demonstrating societal impact. So thank you very much.
Social sciences and humanities subjects are continuously innovating, adapting, and pushing boundaries of the discipline. Dear Aurelia, listening to you was music to my ears. As a representative of social sciences myself, a person who works at SMK University of Applied Social Sciences, and in fact that's relevant to the universities and research institutions across Europe in so many different disciplines, I understand that the importance of social sciences indeed oftentimes is undervalued. There is more impact and sometimes financing given to STEM sciences representatives and their work. And do you have any comment on maybe best practices or some examples of when social sciences impact that you were so much stressing on during your presentation has really been exemplary, and where we could see that importance of social sciences for the general public in academia and research overall?
I think so. Through the different mechanisms, like I mentioned, assessments of the research, social scientists and humanities subjects are giving a stage and a floor to develop and show how they're contributing to their society. But I mean, the recent example of the pandemic as well, as I said, we developed the vaccine in the laboratory, but what happens afterwards? So social scientists are coming in and trying to understand the anthropology of the people's thinking, why the vaccine uptake is so low, why the people are not getting vaccines, why they are not following lockdown rules. And I think all of these questions are the questions that social scientists are trying to understand in order to make better recommendations for the government, so the governments can implement some sort of policies around, for example, lockdowns or the vaccine uptake or some other measures. So even though the social scientists, I don't think so, are seen as those, but here they haven't invented the vaccine from the COVID, let's say the recent the pandemic that is still ongoing, but they are the ones working under radar. They are the ones trying to understand our thinking, why we're acting in the way that we're acting. So either can we prevent, we can understand. And without this understanding that social scientists and humanities are trying to achieve, we would not have a successful outcomes. We would not be able to curb, and I'm not saying to stop pandemic, but at least to have some measures in place that are successful. And in some cases, obviously, we're still battling to understand why it wasn't successful. So this is kind of on the very global and on the topic that is very urgent currently. But then we have the government decisions as well, around the world that are being influenced by social scientists. We have the European Commission focusing, for example, on the youth skills. So they're focusing on the new skills that we have to develop in the new on the workplaces that are being very digitalized. Why is that? Because social scientists, and humanities scholars have done the research. They made the recommendations to the European Commission so they can focus where the new skills are required. So, and then obviously we have STEM subject colleagues coming in and helping us with the technology, but the technology would not be adopted without the social sciences, scientists' help and the support from other humanities as well, disciplines. So I think it's obvious everywhere that social scientists and humanities and arts actually as well, let's not forget arts disciplines, are really key in changing the perceptions and contributing to the development of the culture. But it's not always recognized, as you have said. It's not always on the front news that social sciences solve the problem and the challenges. But I think the interdisciplinary working, involving as well citizens, and social scientists are the bridge to involve the citizens in the projects. They are the bridge in communicating the message of the science to the as well citizens, are going to help us to co-develop a better understanding of different disciplines and hopefully together create a societal impact.
Dear Aurelia, thank you very much. I very much appreciate your extended answer. And as we thank Aurelia, we move on to our next presenter. Vilnius University philosophy faculty docent, Dr. Rūta Žiliukaitė, with her speech, Value Conflicts in Contemporary Lithuanian Society. Dear Rūta, the floor is yours.
Sveiki gyvi. Skaidrės taip rodau, share screen. Share. Laba diena. Just let me introduce myself. I'm Associated Professor of Sociology at Vilnius University, and the last several years, not several years, I think that almost all my academic career, I was involved in research on values, on change of values. And one of my main field of analysis and research was related to civic and political values of society and how they changed during the independence period of Lithuania. Today, I would like to invite you just to pay a little, some attention to questions related to what is going on in our society the last year. And what I would like to invite you is just to stop shortly and to try to look and to give evaluation to events we could all observe during the last year. What I want to say is, and what I would like to propose in this presentation is that during the last year, we could witness development of new political cleavage in Lithuania. What it means, this political cleavage, what do I mean by political cleavage, by value cleavage? It means that we have value conflict, manifestation of value conflict, which could be used for political mobilization. How to define this value? As you know, the carriers united by a newly established organization, the Lithuanian Family Movement, defined it as a conflict, value conflict or collision between traditional Christian family values and liberal, genderistic values. And reaction of academic community to the events related to the activity of the Lithuanian family movement is twofold. On the one hand, researchers want to discuss this and think that it is worth exploring what is going on here. On the other hand, we also have this position in public sphere when everything what is related to the activity of the Lithuanian family movement is ignored, or just simply is tried to, some part of the academic community just simply try to emphasize that what is going on is nothing serious. And we shouldn't pay any attention to this, just, it will go. It will be going by year and it will not have any negative consequences. But I think that we can and have to raise question how the movement and its activity is associated with the possible rise and strengthening of right-wing populism in the country, which could have an effect on forthcoming president and parliamentary elections in Lithuania. So when we speak about the Lithuanian family movement, the best of all is these three aspects define the content of their position. First of all, this movement raised as opposition to the convention, to the Council of Europe Convention of Violence Against Women, known as Istanbul Convention. And the critique was mainly focused on Article 3, which defines gender as socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for women and men, and Articles 12 to 16, which require states to promote changes in the social and cultural patterns of behavior of women and men by means of education and other methods. Also, the Lithuanian family movement is in opposition to the legal recognition of same-sex partnership. And in the end of the summer, during the autumn and now, as you know, they also are opposing measures which are implemented by government, which are aimed at control of the COVID-19, spread of the COVID-19. So they oppose in the beginning, they opposed national immunity certificate, the requirement to wear face masks in schools, and also other measures to decrease the spread of the pandemics. And when we think about these events which are going on in Lithuanian society, what we also have to keep in mind is that opposition to the Istanbul Convention and this repertoire, very similar repertoire, including also opposition to the measures related to the COVID, is not something unique to Lithuania. In general, Istanbul Convention on Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence has encountered resistance in many Central and Eastern European countries. The convention in many countries is considered by opponents as a tool to promote gender ideology and the Brussels imposition of moral norms. And as I said, Lithuania is not the first country where the convention encountered this resistance. We can just start from Poland, then move to Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, and as well as neighboring countries, Latvia, Estonia, also Czech Republic or Slovakia. And when we think about this opposition, when it is given evaluation, it is considered as a backslide of democracy in Central and Eastern Europe, endangering promotion of gender equality and human rights. But at the same time, it is a renewal of debate over the gender issues and mobilization of civil society when more people get involved in activities related to promoting values of gender equality. So altogether allowed to speak about ongoing polarization in society, value polarization in society. In various countries, very similar strategies are applied in opposing the convention. First of all, it is appeal to democratic values and use of democratic tools. Common means used to increase the legitimacy of action is by alternative use of democratic terminology, questioning of liberal human rights by stressing imaginable consequences of the convention in terms of limiting rights, including women's rights, but also rights of families, rights of parents, children, men, and fathers. So as regards the usage of the democratic tools by this opposition, we could observe petitioning, grassroots mobilizations, referenda, pushing for accountability of political representatives, emphasis on constitutionality. So the pointed critique to ideological and social engineering aspects of knowledge by proponents of the convention is very stressed. So also what we observe is in all the countries which I mentioned, we can observe harassment and persecution of actors who stand for the convention. Use of social media to menace women's rights organizations or just to organize, orchestrate some campaigns against, as I said, actors who try to defend the convention. So in some instances, we can observe that violence is used against individual activists. And what is also very interesting that in all the countries, a very similar frames, how it is framed. Frames are used to talk and discuss about the gender issues and about this possible value conflict between traditional Christian family values and liberal genderistic values. So what I would like to show you is Krishan and Rogeband, they made a very extensive and consistent analysis of this opposition to Istanbul Convention. And what they define several frames which are used, as I said, in all the countries. And you can just read them and see in this slide what kind of frames are usually used. So gender is signifier for social transformative ideology, agenda to national tradition, religious doctrine. It is a danger. It is considered as a danger to national traditions, religious doctrine, traditional heterosexual families and children. It is by introducing the category of gender as distinct and disconnected from biological sex. The IC introduces legal uncertainty and undermines the rule of law. And feminists and LGBT groups and some sort of are considered as a sort of international network of left-wing progressive actors that are main beneficiaries of all these changes. So the convention is believed to promote an ideology of social transformation, which would act through education programs and awareness raising, and would supplant traditional social cultural norms, including those norms on the family. And feminists and LGBT groups and some sort of international network, left-wing, they are, as I said, they are portrayed as the motors behind the agenda and also its main beneficiaries. By various actors opposing convention, convention predicted that signing the convention would result in dismantling the understanding of family as a marital relationship between a woman and man. It would permit legalization of same-sex marriages and children's adoption by same-sex parents. And it would nullify the notion of gender grounded on Christian values as defined also, which is emphasized in the Constitution. So these fears are very similar. And if we look at these frames, we just can simply observe them also in what we see in Lithuanian society. Just to look at this slide, I tried to make bold those aspects of those sentences and those words which just illustrates that we do not have nothing exceptional. What we have a very similar thing, which is going. I'm sorry for. Sorry. So my apologies for interruption. So what we have usage, as I said, of a very similar frames. And then the question, do we really have a value basis for this conflict which is going on in our society? And as I think one of the things we can do is just to look at the values of the society. And I propose you to look at two aspects. The situation in Lithuania regarding religiosity, and other, what is the situation in the society regarding traditional family values. And I will use European value study data just to demonstrate what is going on in our society. European value study is one of the oldest longitudinal research projects, which provide possibility, on the one hand, to analyze values of any society in field of family, work, leisure, so political life, religiosity, and other spheres. But it also provides us a comparative perspective, which allows us to look how one or another country looks in the context. So Lithuania in general is a very secularized society. And if we look at the percent of people which we could consider as a core members of Catholic Church, which means that if we speak about these four indicators, church attendance and regular prayer, belonging, subjective emotional identification, how many people feel that they take strength from religion, and how important is God in their life, and how consistent they are in their beliefs regarding traditional Christian doctrine. So what we can say is that in general, the percent of these core members is very small in society. Although majority of the population identify with the Catholic Church, but as we know, it is more cultural identification than identification related to religious identity, which includes some sort of behavior, or we can just at least have some sort of expectation that this religious identity could have an influence on people's values. So on the one hand, if we just look at this religious values, we see that Lithuanian society is really very secularized. But on the other hand, as other East and Central European countries, in Lithuania, we have a very large proportion of people who adhere to traditional family values. And when we speak about traditional family values, we speak about the gender models in the family, traditional gender models of woman and man, and relationship between children and parents. So if we look how traditional family values are distributed among different generations, I'm sorry for just leaving Lithuanian in agenda. So if we take the scale from 0 to 6, where 6 is the most strong traditional orientation, what you can see that generations have very little difference. It means that even among young people in Lithuania, we still have prevalence of traditional family values with their traditional attitudes towards, as I said, gender roles in family, and traditional attitudes towards relationship between parents and children. So in general, this traditionalism and these attitudes, they really provide as if a good ground for this kind of political mobilization, because it corresponds to the values of society, to the values of many people in the society. And if we look again, try to look into the context, international context, what we can see, for example, we can use Christian Welzel offered scale of emancipative values, which include many ingredients important for this value, for this value conflict, including equality or just choice related to, again, homosexuality, abortion, divorce, or voice. So if we just take this emancipative scale and put Lithuania and compare it to other countries, what we can see that Lithuania is in the group of East and Central European countries, and they differ from countries with the older traditions of democracy. Iceland, of course, Germany, Netherlands. As you see, the emancipation level in the population is much higher in these societies than in Eastern Europe, and Lithuania as well. So why in general we should talk, as I said, about this value conflict? I want just again to return to fact that values is one thing, but when value conflict becomes available, or when it becomes the basis for the political mobilization, there is something we have to pay attention. And in general, all these movements, social movement in Lithuania, but also in other Eastern and Central European countries, it really allows us to think about, we can define it as a rise of the illiberal populism. These movements, they combine gender conservatism with a critique of globalization and neoliberalism. As Korolchuk and Graf have put it very correctly, in general, liberal elites by these social movements are presented as colonizers, and genderism is demonized as an ideology imposed by the world's rich on the poor people. And thanks to this anti-colonial frame, anti-genderism has remarkable ideological coherence and great mobilizing power. So right-wing populists have captured the imagination and hearts of large population, and it is very difficult to oppose it. So therefore, in general, what we are talking about is, anyway, it is related to some dangers for democracy and for the quality of democracy. And when we speak about this polarization in the society, what we mean by polarization, again, on the basis of values. Lawrence Wayne Barthold, in his book, which was published quite recently in 2020, Overcoming Polarization, he says that polarization in the society is a secular process involving three features. First, polarization pertains to how we think about the other identities, about identities of other people, about the others' identities. More specifically, polarization occurs when we privilege identities that differ and downplay or ignore identities we share with the others. If our neighbor may have and may hold similar political attitudes and similar political ideals, but if we refuse to accept this neighbor on the basis of gender identity or on the basis of ethnicity or on the basis of religion, then polarization is more likely to ensure. And polarization is not just noticing differences between people, and it is not even the fear of the differences. One could, for example, fear that other, but acknowledge that those fears are unfounded and work to open oneself to listening to the others. But what is wrong with the polarization of the society on the value conflict, on the basis of value conflicts, is that polarization occurs when a fear born of difference transforms into us versus them thinking. And polarization, as I said, it doesn't refer to differences per se. That is where issue differences is easily captured by some polling data. So this construction of the conflict, us versus them, is not healthy for a democratic society. Pluralism of the ways of life is something which we can understand in the frame of democratic values, but it's very difficult to accept polarization, which, as I said, is built on the distinction and this divide between us versus them. So in this context, I think that academic community has responsibility to pay attention and try to involve people in the dialogue. The thing which is very important for this is that when we have polarization in the society, we can't rely on traditional forms of rational argumentation and this reason-based persuasion. But what we really need is to try to keep this talking, and this talk should be based on trust and mutual understanding, which means that, again, the responsibility of the society would be to try to involve people not in fighting and just taking their guns off, but in trying to listen to each other, and not in just helping the people to talk from their perspective, just to share their ideas, their values, but not to hurry to judge and try to use some labels to define the other group with the different values. So in general, what is going on, as I said, in Lithuania should just be kept in center of our attention. And as I said, anyway, both politicians and politicians and NGOs and also academic community, members of academic community, try to have a responsibility in keeping up dialogue and trying just in general trying to reduce polarization or just prevent the development and deepening of the polarization in the society, because, as I said, it really may have a negative consequences for democratic processes in the society. So I shared my main ideas. Thank you for listening.
Ruta Žilinskaitė, thank you so much for your time with us and extended examples and knowledge you shared. And now I would like to give the floor to the third presentation, collective presentation of Dr. Giedrė Vaičekauskienė, Dr. Miglė Černikovaitė, Raimondas Paškevičius, representing SMK, VMU, MRU, on the topic Identity Narratives of Lithuanian Academic Youth in the Digital Age. Please, Raimondas, Giedrė, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Diana. Thank you all. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our presentation.
Good morning.
First of all, let me thank you all for coming here today. As you can see, we are two with my colleague Raimondas Paškevičius, with whom I will present the topic. Actually, this research was conducted by three authors. Dr. Miglė Černikovaitė is our co-author as well. Let me start by saying a few words about my own background. I am a doctor social sciences Giedrė Vaičekauskienė. My scientific interests are old and new media, mediatization, image projection in the media. I am representing SMK University of Applied Social Sciences. Also, I teach at Vytautas Magnus University and Vilnius University. Let me address to my colleague Raimondas. Could you introduce yourself?
I'm a lecturer at SMK, and my scientific interest is storytelling.
Okay, good. Let's move on to the title. As you can see on the screen, our research named Identity Narratives of Lithuanian Academic Youth in the Digital Age. First, I would like to give you an overview of the context of our research. We live in a new digital global infrastructure environment. Our coffee houses are social networks. On the internet, digital society has the opportunity to acquire an identity that would be recognized without actual practice. Social media initiate new forms of socialization. And today, all social institutions are media institutions. What is the scientific problem? The social function of the media of the broadcasting era, collective television watching, collective listening to the radio, collective visits to the theater or cinema is disappearing. Growing fragmentation, polarization of society. And in this light, we would like to stress that in changing model of media landscape, for example, news consumption, communication, and world cognition, we focus on digital generation, how young people perceive themselves in the global world. In this slide, you can see our research questions, which are, first, how the most active residents of digital screen infrastructure, young people, support or do not support the myth or heroes of Lithuanian identity. What national ideals are great and why, and how do academic youth as the future intellectual and moral potential of Lithuania see future scenarios for the maintenance of Lithuanian identity. Briefly show methodology. The aim of this research is to identify the heroes, myth, and stereotypes of Lithuanian academic youth from the perspective of Lithuanian identity through storytelling, evaluating digital channels through which information is obtained. The research was based on qualitative studies. Method 6 focus group with 27 years old bachelor students from all over Lithuania. We discussed with more than 50 students and data analyzed on the basis of qualitative content analysis. And finally, the major results, we received 5 stories, narratives, which are the role of schools, the role of themselves. It means the role of our informants, students. The third story is the Lithuanian language first. Fourth, more media channels, less common heroes, and strong Lithuanian character. And I kindly ask my colleague Raimondas open these narratives.
Thank you, Giedre. And let's start from the role of schools. The participants of our research indicated a very important contribution of the school in the formation of their national identity, especially the role of teachers of history and citizenship, who are supporting Lithuanian historical narratives, encourages to celebrate public and traditional holidays. In this age of fragmented media, the school has remained the only one channel to broadcast unified messages to all young generation. The results of our research also revealed that academic youth partially regard themselves as personalities who foster Lithuanian identity in their families and support Lithuanian symbols in public life of Lithuania. Symbols of Lithuanian pride for them are Vytis, Lithuanian tricolor, coat of arms, anthem.
I will present the fourth narrative, the Lithuanian language first. The findings of, according to the results, Lithuanian personalities, the findings of the research show that Lithuanian language and personal literacy are very important for academic youth. These narrative emerge in each focus group. Informants told us like the Lithuanian language is first. Category personal literacy means accuracy of Lithuanian writing and speaking. And students gave us a lot of examples how they put efforts to improving Lithuanian language in daily routine. Despite the optimistic rhetoric, the research identified issues on which the informants did not agree. There is no unified belief that the Lithuanian language will remain in the global world. Fifth story, narrative, which named more media channels, less common heroes. What does it mean? According to the results, Lithuanian personalities and heroes to be followed are more individual than collective choices. This fact we can explain by impact of rich hybrid media system, where the power is fragmented, plural, and dispersed. Interesting finding that Lithuanian basketball players are already questioned as ambassadors of Lithuania. Dual citizenship will help maintain of a Lithuanian identity. Research data shows that the most important media for academic youth are social networks, especially Facebook with followed opinion leaders, even politicians, journalists, and other famous people in Lithuania. They watch podcasts on YouTube. In the research emerged that students like watch national broadcaster, Lithuanian radio and television LRT, news portals 15 Min, Delphi, L-Rytas, and others. In overall, need to say that individually selected media from the hybrid media system.
And the last story, strong Lithuanian character. The participants of our research indicated three main features of the Lithuanian strong character. First, Lithuanians are hardworking. This narrative is coming from ages and is still alive. Second, Lithuanians still have close connection with nature. In the words of the participants, we still know the taste of wild strawberries and can gather mushrooms without the risk to be poisoned. In the narratives about the connection with nature, one can hear a longing for paganism and interfaces with the green movement. Third feature of the Lithuanian strong character mentioned by participants of the research, more painful experience than the experience of use of Western countries. In the words of the participants, we are not as naive as Westerners, and they see value in that.
And as a final point, I'd like to draw your attention to into the sentences from our informants, students. The first, there are always people who care about issues of nationality, like we before nowadays. There are quite a few of us who don't want to emigrate. The future of Lithuanian identity we see quite optimistic. Let's talk about this issue in 200, 300 years. So, students believe that the younger generation, as they mature, will start to care about Lithuanianness. That idea completes our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Raimondas Paškevičius, thank you very much for your presentation and giving us insights on Lithuanianness. Now we have concluded our panel session, and the next part of the conference is about us moving into the sections, listening to the presentations the speakers have presented for us. The next part and work of sections will start at 11:30 by Lithuanian local time. For those of you who are watching the conference online being in a different time zone, we talk about some 15-minute break from now, when the section work will resume. You all have received the link to Zoom sessions. And as you know, the conference program has been split into 4 sections, formed with presentations both in Lithuanian and English, with consideration of the scientific fields of the research works and the language considerations. All participants will be automatically assigned to their sections by our tag team, and you have already received the invitations. I would like to remind that the presentation of each speaker should last 10 minutes, with some 5 minutes extra time for questions and answers from the audience. One may shift between the sections so that to see more speakers during the day, and we strongly encourage you to do so if your commitments allow. At this moment, the team of organizers wishes everyone an enjoyable and enriching experience. On behalf of SMK University of Applied Social Sciences, I would like to thank our honorable guests for their inspirational welcome speeches and the insights shared. With these words, I would like to conclude the opening session. See you in the sections.